I had this old hickory cutoff board. I wanted to do something with it. It had a lot of wormholes in it, so I knew from the beginning I was going to have to do a epoxy pour of some sort. This board is actually a cutoff that I've had leaning in the garage for a while. It's a cutoff from a whiskey smoker display that I did earlier on in my YouTube. And I'll admit that I have a problem. I don't throw away wood. It just sits there until I figure out ways to use it on projects. Now I got this wood for pretty cheap, but you can see the wormholes in it. It has me a little worried. These wormholes are pretty big, but with a little epoxy, I might be able to salvage and make something good out of it. We'll see. Now I didn't want to spend a ton of time and effort to make an epoxy mold for this, so I just kept it simple. I found a piece of MDF laying around, and I used some tape, some packing tape that I used to pack my Etsy orders. And I just used that to make a simple mold, and it worked. Now, when it comes to the different types of epoxies that I use, I think the liquid glass epoxy that I'm using here, and I'll have a link in the description. It's a really thin epoxy and it's going to do a good job seeping down in those cracks and wormholes and stuff like that. So I have a thicker type of epoxy that I use that sets up faster, but I don't think it would dive down in these wormholes like I need it to. Now, I haven't been on YouTube for very long, and I haven't been woodworking for that long. I'm learning things as I go here, and I've started to capture some things on YouTube. And I'd really like to hear your opinion on how you think things are going. And I would really appreciate a like and a subscription if you'd like to continue to see this type of content. I would like to grow and get better and put more stuff out there that you want to see. So let me know. Feel free to comment and give me some advice and some things that you'd like to see in the future. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks. That shiny surface that you see, that's just packing tape where I layered packing tape on top of it to keep the moisture from collecting inside the board because it's been sitting for a while. And if you've worked with wood, you'll know that your wood would turn into a potato chip if you let it collect moisture and expose it to the environment. So use packing tape, use a bag, put a weight on it or something like that to keep that moisture from getting in there and possibly ruining your project. Now, I thought this was a good time to try a bow tie that I make from my CNC. Now, I've did them by hand before, but I was always curious on whether I could cut and make a bow tie and make it work by just utilizing my CNC instead of handwork. And I'm going to try that here. Like many woodworkers, I had many scrap pieces of hardwood laying around, and I decided to go with a purple heart here. Let me know how you think the purple heart worked out as a bow tie inlay. Now, don't worry, I am well aware that my bandsaw is shaking here. I have it mounted to a post, and it's not the stablest thing in the world, but it works where it is and it's out of the way, so I like it here. I don't use it that often anyway, but when I do, it comes in handy. Now, I didn't have any clamps or any way to clamp this thing down, so I got a little creative. I took another piece of scrap hickory wood, and I'm gonna clamp this thing on down and let it dry like this. Now, don't worry, I'm ready for the comments to come in the comments field that bow ties are not bow ties and they're not woodworking if they're done with a CNC. Yes, I know. And I guess you can see by now that I've started using my CNC for a lot of my projects. And I like to incorporate CNC work regular woodworking, hand tools. I like to do a little bit of everything. So if you like that kind of stuff, don't forget to subscribe. Now, when I first started woodworking, obviously I didn't have a planer or a joiner, but game changers in woodworking as you advance your skill level, you have to get a good planer, a decent joiner, and they don't have to be perfect. You look around in my shop and I got Facebook Marketplace written all over everything. You don't have to have nice fancy tools, but if you're going to advance your woodworking, you need to get you a good planer, a good joiner. I'm going to tell you, before I got my planer and joiner, I used to go to the big box store and I would try to get the perfect lumber, the ones without the twist, without the bow, and I would still have issues because I didn't have a way to flatten it properly. As compared to now where I can use a scrap piece of anything and make anything I want. I have these little rubber bumpers that you see in the video. I call them cutting board feet. I've gotten where I like to recess these in my cutting board and display pieces. I think it looks a little better, looks a little bit more professional. You let me know what you think. Now, to prove that I'm almost a woodworker, I'm going to use a rowdy here to show that I don't need a CNC to actually do real woodworking. And that comment's for all the CNC haters out there. I still love you. Now, going into the dreaded finishing process, I'm going to skip through a lot of the sanding here and I'm going to fast forward. But I want you to see my process, and I'm going to get into a water pop, and then I'm going to go into a Rubio Monocoat finish after the final sand. And I don't know how to pronounce this Rubio Monocoat, so I'm going to put it up on the screen. I don't know who comes up with the names for Rubio Monocoat, but you got me on this one. Now, you let me know what you think, but I think overall this turned out pretty good. But I got to tell you, at first I was a little worried. But the more I worked this in, the more I saw that this actually brings out a pretty good natural old look to the wood. And I was happy with it after everything was said and done. Now, here's those cutting board feet going into the recesses I cut. And we're about finished here. We're going to see what this thing looks like inside.